Hey, this is Clayton with Everything Ponds. Today we are on a pond install. So this is an existing liner that had failed, and we are going to install a new liner. So we are going with our Premium RPE 30 mil laminated liner, and that's sort of our go-to liner these days. It's nice and strong, it's lightweight, definitely stronger than the existing EPDM rubber liner that was in here. So actually, we peeled back the EPDM rubber liner already, and then underneath that was another liner. And that's the one you can see behind here, and it's not EPDM. I think it's some kind of a PVC material, but it had really shrunk. So what we did was we cut the bottom out of that because it was actually not tight enough to the substrate. Put a few slits in that liner, and then we've just chosen to leave that liner as is, as a bit of a protective layer beneath the new liner. So in the very bottom of this pond right here, there is some outdoor carpet that the person who initially installed this liner had put in as a protective layer. So normally we like to go with a geotextile pond underlayment, and just the reason why is it doesn't decompose, never rots. Sometimes when people use carpet, it can actually start to rot. This looks like more of an outdoor carpet, so I think it's fine. We've chosen to leave it in there. But so far we've got a nice smooth surface. We've removed all the debris. There was some rocks and dirt and stuff in there, so we've scooped that all out. We actually cut the bottom of the existing liner out because it was just too tight in there. That's one mistake some people make when installing a liner, is they put the liner in too tight. So if you install a liner correctly, the liner has a bit of looseness to it. And that's so when the water is added, the weight of the water is actually pushing on the ground and not stressing the liner, tenting over some gap or a void. So you want to have a nice smooth base, and then you want to install that liner in and give it some wiggle room. So when the water is added, it can push the liner into the various corners, nooks and crannies, so that you're not ending up in a situation where it's stretching or pushing that liner. If you end up with a situation where it's going over a void or a gap, if it's a small one, maybe an inch or less, it's fine. But let's say you tent it over a big gap, just something you want to avoid. So the next step here is we're going to unbox the new liner, and then we're going to lay it in to the existing pond, and we'll show you how that looks in a minute here. All right, so here is the box that this liner came in. This is a 20 by 16, 30 mil laminated liner. So it comes in a box in a roll. So this right here is some repair tape. It's a 4-inch wide tape. We include a little bit of this in each liner, just in case you put a hole or something in the liner, or maybe a scuff, or you can actually just cut some of this and put a patch over top. It's waterproof. Another thing you can do with this, you can actually get longer rolls. We could do 100-foot rolls of this, or partial rolls on our website if you want it. You can cut a piece of liner and tape a patch down. Yeah, so that's what that is. And here's the liner right here. When you're actually opening these boxes and you're using a razor, just be really careful, because sometimes the liner is right underneath the flaps of the cardboard, and you could, if you used a big enough knife, you could slice right into the liner. So just be really careful when you're opening the box. We always write on the side the dimensions of the liner and which way to unroll first. So this is a 16 by 20, 30 mil laminated RPE. So right here it says, not sure if you can see it, it says 16 by 20 with an arrow this way and an arrow this way for each dimension. So the 20-foot dimension in this case has an arrow. That means that we want to unroll the 20-foot dimension first. And then after it's unrolled, you'll pull across the 16-foot dimension. This is more important when you have a big liner. Like, let's say you had a 200 by 100. You wouldn't want to unroll that the wrong direction, because now your liner, it's a pretty heavy liner, and you'd have to actually pull that around or re-roll it. Something like this, you could easily pull it around if you unrolled it the wrong way, but it's always nice to do it right the first time. We could probably flop this over. All right, so we've got the liner kind of loose laid into the pond hole now. As you see, we've done sort of some general bigger pleats in the corners. You can see because there's a rock on each one of those pleats. It's not looking perfect yet. You can kind of work on this for a while. It's sort of like wrapping a present. You can kind of work your liner in, push it into the corners as you go, leave a little bit of wiggle room so it's a little bit loose, so when you add the water, there's a bit of room for it to shift. And then as you go, you can pleat it to get it lying nice and flat. And as far as aesthetics, it depends what you're going to do with it in the end. If you're planning on seeing the liner and it's sort of part of the finished look, then maybe you want to do a better job smoothing that liner out and make it look really nice. But sometimes people are just putting rock over the liner anyways, and in which case it doesn't really matter what the liner looks like as long as it's functional. So one thing you really want to watch out for is you don't want to install the liner too tight. You want it to have a little bit of wiggle room so when you add the water, it can shift around and move and get into all those corners, nooks, and crannies so the liner isn't tenting over anything. So the finished product here will involve covering the edge of the liner with soil, dirt. You can dig an anchor trench and bury it underneath, or some people will pile rocks on top just to hide the liner. Oftentimes people will bring rock right over the edge into the pond as well, so you don't see the liner at all. This is the 30 mil laminated liner. So it has a shiny side and a matte side, and the shiny side is actually a laminated coating that gives it extra UV protection. So this is the one liner that we have that you can actually leave exposed to the sun with nothing covering it if you want. If for aesthetic reasons, if you want to cover it, of course, go ahead and do that. The other RPE liners, the non-laminated ones, you pretty much have to cover to protect from the sun. You probably only get 5 years out of it if it's exposed to the sun all the time. This one has a 20-year warranty even when it's exposed to the sun all the time. So this is by far the most UV stable liner we have. So the next step for this liner is we're actually going to put some water in it, and that's one way you can kind of guarantee the liner isn't too tight, because you can add water in, the water starts filling, the liner will kind of shift and pull as it needs room for the water, and then once you've done that, you can either empty the water if you like, or you can keep it in there and then anchor the liner around the edge to get it nice and secure so that it's not going to fall in with weather or wind or rain. So one thing about the RPE liners is they're a little bit stiffer than the EPDM rubber liners. I find it's usually not a problem. The folds don't lie quite as flat sometimes though, so usually if you have like a big pleat or fold, if you put some kind of landscaping feature like a rock or something to help hold that pleat, that helps. The rubber tends to lie really flat. It's a bit of a trade-off. The RPE is about 3 to 4 times more puncture resistant than the EPDM, but the RPE is just a little stiffer. I find in most practical cases that it's fine. This pond actually has a couple little shelves here, and the RPE liner will fold into that just fine. So here I am down inside the pond excavation, and one thing you want to do when you're installing the liner is you want to make sure that you're always pushing the liner into the corners as you go. You don't want a situation where it's sort of tenting over. So this is a little shelf right here. You don't want it tenting over that. And if ideally you want to keep a little bit of looseness. So the bottom of this is actually rounded as it goes. Thanks for checking out the video. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to call, email, get in touch with us, and we're happy to help. Thanks guys, have a great day.